So some people are like really angry with me and frustrated and blame me for what they essentially did. Make no mistake, if the police and the CPS have chosen to take you to court, it's because of your actions, not because of mine. I was born and grew up in Zimbabwe, and it was a fantastic childhood. I was really, really lucky to have something like that. Back then, there wasn't much in the way of personal computers, no mobile phones. I remember we had a rotary dial phone. I mean, the weather's exceptionally good. It's one of the best climates in the world. So a lot of outdoor life, living on relatively large properties, having lots of dogs around. It was pretty good childhood. I would ride to school on my bicycle from a very young age. I remember being pushed to school by my mum, and I was on one of these old-fashioned scooters with the spoked wheels and the thick white tires, and she would push me. And then when I got older, I got my own bike, and I would get to ride to school. My mum was always worried about me crossing one busy road that was on the way to junior school. I do remember that. It was his birthday, and I tried to get him to come out gliding with me. Back then, I used to fly full-size gliders, and he did like to fly with me once in a while. But he decided no, he'd like to go and visit his friend in Greystone Park. And then on his way back, he was hit by a drunk driver in a car, and he was on a little Suzuki motorcycle. I remember coming back from the gliding club and hearing the phone ringing, and it took me a while to come into the house because I lived in my parents' house at the time, but in a room away from the house. So it took me a little while, and I remember hearing the phone ringing repeatedly. I answered the phone, and I got some kind of garbled message from a shopkeeper. It's not like the UK back then when you'd have a policeman come dressed up in number ones to bring the bad news. And the shopkeeper just said there'd been some kind of accident and told me where it was. So I actually rode out there on my motorcycle. Yeah, it was pretty awful, really. I remember seeing the smashed up car and the wreckage of my dad's motorbike. It didn't even look like the nice motorbike it was. And yeah, my dad's body under a yellow blanket. And of course, stupidly, I rode home, which was not very sensible, really. But anyway, the road culture and the court culture was quite different than it is probably nowadays, and that it is here in the UK. So I suspect it wasn't unusual to not find out. And to be honest, I didn't make an effort to try and find out either. Like I said, though, it's a long time ago, and I think I'm well over the trauma. So interestingly enough, I never set out to become big on social media. My goal was really to try and change something around road safety. I think pretty much every cyclist I know in the UK feels about the injustice around car culture and cyclists. So things like close passes weren't being dealt with by the police, even if it was through a company vehicle, a liveried van, for example. Very often the van driver would simply tell his boss, "Oh no, the cyclist swerved around a pothole, and I didn't mean to come close to him." And of course, the truth was, if we were reporting, would have been very different. Back then, reporting involved going to a police station, filling out a long paper form, and burning a CD. I think it was on. I think DVDs were around by then, and giving that to the police. And then often they wouldn't take any action anyway. I think a lot of police were astounded at how many cyclists were now presenting evidence like this, and I think there'd be no idea of what life on the road really was like for cyclists. Showing what happened in a public place on say YouTube and making it publicly visible will start to have an effect on a driver's mindset. They'll realize that actually what they did wasn't in the closed-in space of their own car, and that doing stuff out in public can have consequences. People can see what people are up to, and therefore you should moderate your own behavior. Yeah, the main purpose was being able to keep the video and to show the driver what had happened. I had no real expectation that lots of people would watch. Obviously, over time, the channel had a steady growth. I think I might have got to 6,000 or 7,000 subscribers around 2018, 2019, just before I became well known. So I haven't really done TikTok. So all the videos on TikTok are people having stolen my videos and put them there. It's a kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because in the one hand, those people are doing a whole bunch of work that to be fair, I'm a little bit lazy to be doing myself. This is something I do in a bit of my spare time. I still have a life and my own job. So they're doing this work and they're getting the message out there for me, and they're getting some benefit for it, sure. On the other hand, then they are also pirating my videos. So I don't really know how I feel on it, is the answer. So I am getting AdSense revenue from my YouTube videos. It's not my main goal. But yeah, I still work, and I definitely wouldn't give up my job unless I was forced to. And the reason why is I'm a factotum for a wealthy family. Factotum just means I'm a dog's body. So I do stuff like IT support on their laptops, online ordering, searching out stuff, general admin. And then for me, the biggest part, which is working with a young lad called Ibrahim, my boss's son. I can talk about him, by the way, because he's already famous on it in his own right. And he has Down syndrome. So we tend to do a bunch of sports together, skating, that's rollerblading, ice skating too. And he's become a little bit like a third son to me. And he calls me Uncle Mike. So maybe I can point out that some of you might have seen him already, in that there's a very viral video of, it's titled something like King's Guard Steps Next to Autistic Boy. He doesn't have autism. But yeah, we were taking a photo by the King's Guard, but the guard stepped closer to us so we could have a nice picture. And yeah, it's had like more than 300 million views across all the different social media. Before 2019, I tried to be pretty anonymous, largely because of the large amounts of abuse that came my way. Actually, I appeared on Jeremy Vine's show without people knowing my name, and that was about 2 of the Gandalf corner stops. And then I think the Guy Ritchie video came out, and the Evening Standard outed me. So basically, he was texting in a slow-moving queue in Hyde Park, and I videoed him. I had no idea who he was. In fact, I even remember seeing that on his fleece, there was his old Twitter handle, which subsequent to then he closed the Twitter handle. I don't know if he's reopened it, but I remember looking it up and thinking, oh no, that's not him. He was actually a gentleman. You couldn't ask for a better behavior. Weirdly, as I came up to him, my spectacles bounced over a bump in the road and it distorted my view of his screen. So I actually, the very first thing I saw was, I thought I saw his screen was in Hebrew. And it wasn't. The week before, I'd videoed another lady near Gandalf Corner, and she was actually texting in Hebrew. So maybe that triggered something in my brain. So I said shalom to him, and I was just trying to be respectful. And then I saw it was English, so I immediately felt like an idiot. And then because it went to court, my name was in the court documents. And the Evening Standard have a really good court reporter called Tristan Kirk, who I admire quite a lot. He's exceptionally talented. And yeah, he found out about me. Yeah, and I didn't like it very much because I didn't really want that fame. And to be honest, I still don't want the fame, or you could call it infamy, really, given that I'm a bit like Marmite and some people love me and some people really hate me. So I remember, I think it was maybe 2018, they changed to a new system, which I remember being irritated about because now I had to give far more detail than I did to RoadSafe. Essentially, it was an online version of the paper report we used to do a decade or so ago. And then they started getting prosecutions. And obviously, they took a while for those prosecutions to come through. And suddenly now again, I realized the power of this third-party video reporting. And that's when I started saying, okay, look, I can see this person on the phone. I can report them and something will happen. And my goal there is to change road safety for other people, not just for myself. You'd rather catch someone and get them some points on a fine, which is regarded as like the worst thing ever, maybe online. But the whole thing with the point system is designed to teach us without making our mistakes catastrophically impact our lives. And you have to accumulate those 12 points before you get considered for a disqualification. I think we've all seen some of the newspaper articles where there's people driving on like 50 or 80 points. And there's this thing called exceptional hardship. So let's imagine, say, Ibrahim, for example, if I was his dad, which I'm not, and I'd be proud to be his dad because he's lovely, and I was the only person with a driving license in the family and driving him, well, that would be a very easy reason to claim exceptional hardship if I got more than 12 points. It's not exceptional hardship for me. I mean, the disqualification could lose me my job, and that wouldn't be considered exceptional hardship. But it would be exceptionally hard for Ibrahim because he so much more depends on other people transporting him. Generally, I agree with it. I think it's probably applied too easily in the courts. And I think that certainly amongst people involved in traffic safety, a lot of the traffic officers feel that the courts give it out too easily. I'm inclined to agree with that, but on the other hand, there are good reasons when it should be given. In theory, your reason for exceptional hardship can be used only once, and if you again get more points, you should then be disqualified. But I guess something is happening wrong when you can get 50 or 80 points on your license. You must have had exceptional hardship many, many, many times. And I don't think there's more than one or more than a couple of reasons that any of those drivers could have put forward. I don't know for sure, I'm guessing.
Hi, and welcome to Deep.
We're a brand new channel from the team behind such shows as
Agree to Disagree, Minutes Within the Gap, to name a few.
And now we've launched this new channel to keep telling stories.
And we love to hear what you think. So if there's a particular person you want to hear from, a particular theme that you want us to cover, please drop us a comment, and also like and subscribe for more.
We really hope you're enjoying the channel, and if you are, we've just launched a brand new Patreon account with all sorts of extra content.
Early access, extra videos, behind the scenes clips, and even merch. If that sounds good to you, then check out the link in our description.
thank you, hit that subscribe button, and now back to our story.
So I had to think about it quite a lot, and one of the things that developed my morality, my own internal morality around that problem, was that particular taxi driver. Yeah, I caught this taxi driver, and he parked up, leaving his fare in the cab. This was in Hyde Park, and he came up to him and begged me not to report him. And the most I would give him, I said to him, "Look, I'll think about it. I don't promise any more than that." And then he said, "I'm going to kill myself if you report me and I get convicted." In the end, he got off. I don't think he was prosecuted, and I can't remember the reason why now, but I mean, I'm not particularly fazed by that. So I did have quite a hard think about it. And I should point out, it's much harder for taxi drivers, basically because if you have a clean license and you get a single mobile phone conviction, either as a black cab driver or as a private hire vehicle, an Uber, TfL will usually take away your taxi license, your green badge, or your private hire license. And that's because they don't want drivers with mobile phone convictions driving around the capital. My initial view is that's really quite harsh, and I think it kind of takes away the purpose of the point system, which is to allow you to learn from your mistakes. And I posted about it at the time on Twitter, and a lot of people told me I was far too easy on them. I then went and spoke to a bunch of traffic officers who I happen to know through what I do, and their view was, no, if you just talk to him, he'll do it again in the next hour and the next day. Their view was that such drivers would just carry on using their phone. And I think that's probably true for most people. I have kind of a structure, right? If I give words of advice to a driver as a cyclist, they're just probably going to dismiss me out of hand. And cyclists are not well regarded in the UK. If a police officer gives words of advice to a driver, they might take it on board for a little bit longer, but inevitably they'll probably go back to using their phones in the next hour or day again. If they get prosecuted, it's much more likely to have a much longer suppressive effect on their traffic offending. And again, there are still then a minority of people who will go on to further offend and keep on offending despite that conviction. And you can see in some of my videos, there are multiple drivers I've caught more than once to the point of being disqualified on the basis of my videos. And then last of all, you'll get the really tiny minority of drivers who'll keep on driving even after being disqualified. So yes, that's my view. And even a relatively nice driver like him, who spoke nicely, who was polite, who didn't get angry with me, my feeling, he's been using the phone hundreds or thousands of times before. And nice people still get involved in traffic collisions and still end up injuring and killing people. So I think I should report everyone, whether they're nice or nasty. Otherwise, it's not fair. I'll accept that stationary phone use is less dangerous than moving phone use, but then I'm going to point out that nearly every stationary phone driver I've seen, that's when I've caught them, and they've only stopped using the phone because I've caught them. So many of them I still see using their phones whilst they're moving, and often while they're overtaking me. I've had several in the last week who overtook me whilst using their phones, but the only evidence that I could present to the court was them using their phone when they were stationary, because I'm on a bicycle and not a motorbike. Another part is the highway code and good driver practice expects us all to be alert and aware of what's around us when we're stopped in the queue. For example, pedestrians crossing, particularly in Hyde Park, where you get a lot of pedestrians crossing the road, and cyclists and motorcyclists filtering past the queue. You've got to be aware of those. And what tends to happen with the stationary phone driver is they won't be aware because they'll have their head buried in their phone. Then you'll get the driver behind beeping because the queue's moved off, and then they'll slam the phone down and drive off immediately with a jerk. So that's one of the reasons it's dangerous. Another one is that phone use gives you cognitive impairment. It affects your consciousness. And this is via scientific research. It's not just what I'm saying. There's studies to back this up. And it's essentially like you load up your brain like you would maybe with a balloon of laughing gas, which is also horrible when you see that around London. So it's a bit like somebody breathing laughing gas from a balloon at the lights, getting high, and then not using the balloon while they drive to the next traffic light. And that nitrous oxide goes out of your system relatively quickly, and probably a bit like the cognitive impairment from mobile phones takes a while to dissipate from your brain. So you're essentially driving drunk, having used your phone, except drunk on the phone, from traffic light to traffic light, and you're topping it up at every traffic light. And interestingly enough, that same traffic officer I mentioned earlier, Mark Hodson, he's been to 3 fatalities where drivers were using their phones stationary and then drove off impaired and killed somebody. Less dangerous than when you're driving and moving, but equally stationary phone use is a pattern of behavior. And people who use their phone stationary will inevitably end up using it moving in nearly all cases. Case law says driving starts with a series of actions, and driving and being in control of your vehicle ends with another series of actions. So the starting of driving might begin with getting in your car and sitting in the driver's seat. It might be putting your seatbelt on. It might be starting the engine or arming the engine in the case of an electric car. You'd have to put it in gear. You'd have to let the handbrake on. And all of these actions mean that you have started driving. And you end driving once you park up. You maybe take your seatbelt off. You get out of the car. So where exactly that line is drawn, that's up to the courts, and I'm not 100% sure of it. But again, I don't catch people who are actually parked. I've quite often cycled past people who are on the phone, parked up, and the engine is running. So I think technically that would still be driving, but I don't bother to report that. And I don't think it's right to punish someone who's mostly doing the right thing. They've taken the action to get themselves out of traffic and they've parked up, even if it's not perfect. The police will not prosecute an allegation unless you agree to go to court, because obviously it's a waste of time. The guy would just have to say, no, I'm not guilty, and then they won't be able to do anything more. And secondly, once you've said you're going to go to court, you're required to go to court. I don't think they would bother to forcibly take you to court for a driving offence, but certainly more serious crimes, the police will come and arrest you from your house and take you straight before the court. I don't know what level that changes at. Luckily, I don't go to court very often. I think I've been to court 7 or 8 times this year, considering I reported 480 last year. Yeah, I mean, people are a wide-ranging scale. So some people are like really angry with me and frustrated and blame me for what they essentially did. Make no mistake, if the police and the CPS have chosen to take you to court, it's because of your actions, not because of mine. I'm only the sort of the grain of sand in the kettle where the bubble has triggered off. That person's lucky not to have been caught beforehand. So in my mind, those who are getting angry and blaming me are just showing emotional immaturity. They're not taking responsibility for their own actions. Quite a lot of people will accept that it's not personal for me. They'll probably have Googled my name, and they'll realize I'm not doing it because it's them specifically. And some people will be really quite friendly and they'll be understanding. It's not uncommon that I've had a hug and handshakes from people outside the court. I feel quite a lot of empathy, and I feel the pain of these drivers, and you can really see it sometimes when the wheels of justice start grinding down upon them and the consequences are hitting home. It's horrible. It's not nice. Going to court is not something I enjoy. You know, this is a serious thing, and it has serious real-world impacts. On the other hand, you know, I do still question myself every time. If I didn't question myself, I wouldn't be very honest about what I'm doing. And in the end, I have to think about it's their choice to have broken the law. And if I don't catch them now, imagine if they then go on to kill somebody and destroy for real someone else's family. In most cases, all these drivers are getting are a 6-month ban, and then they can go back to working or to driving as they wish. It's hardly the most catastrophic thing as it would be having a death in someone else's family. So Gandalf Corner is a corner in Regent's Park in London, right next to the Royal College of Physicians, for anyone who wants to look it up. And it's on a corner where the straight ahead road, which is Regent's Park Outer Circle, leads onto Park Square East and onto Marylebone Road. About half of drivers want to go in that direction. And then about another half of drivers want to turn right onto what is still Regent's Park Outer Circle. And of course, they're held up by those who are in the queue waiting to go straight ahead. So the goal there of these wrong drivers are that they're trying to skip the queue and beat the traffic by going on the wrong side of a keep left sign on a pedestrian refuge and the wrong side around this junction. This junction has a hedge in it. What's really entertaining is some of my haters say, "You're hiding in the bush." But I'm like, I'm just standing on the hedge where the traffic coming the proper direction would be exactly where they are and why they can't see these oncoming cars. So if the oncoming drivers can't see me, then they can't see the oncoming traffic either until it's too late. Essentially what it is they're causing conflict with me, and all I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to prevent them from creating further danger because of the traffic come the other way. And in particular, some of my friends are more keen cyclists and go training in Regent's Park. So they're coming the other way around that corner, about to meet head-on with drivers. So those that have got very shirty with me, well, I'm not backing down because, it's only little me and versus a heavy and powerful car. That driver's essentially holding a weapon towards me. So what you see as conflict, I see more as just not backing down and not taking any rubbish from these drivers, which is something of a cultural thing from Southern Africa.
And what do the police think of you?
So when it comes to Gandalf Corner, they're much more ambivalent, and they ask me not to put myself in harm's way, which is fair. And I think that's quite a moral difference between what I'm doing and what the driver's doing. So I'm trying very hard never to put anyone else in danger. I think in our society, anyone is allowed to take their own risks. You're allowed to choose to smoke. You're allowed to choose to do skydiving or, let's say, motocross or something like that. Where you become morally wrong is when you put other people in danger because of your choices. And the drivers are putting other people in danger, which is why I feel able to stop them in that way. I don't think they see me as inciting stuff. I think they see me as just standing my ground. And I hope that's a correct view. I'm not sure why it is a minority of people think I try and cause conflict. Very often if someone backs down at Gandalf Corner immediately, that's it, I leave them alone. I don't talk to them anymore. I'm not there to make content. I mean, inevitably, that's a by-effect of what I do. I'm simply witnessing a crime and then reporting it to the police and then leaving the police and the CPS to prosecute and the magistrates or judges to judge the drivers. I think that's pretty much the exact opposite of what a vigilante does. I accept there are some parts of what I do that come slightly closer to the vigilante thing, but I still don't think they fall under vigilantism. I would be a vigilante if I say snatched the phone out of the driver's hand and threw it over the house. So the bits that come slightly closer are putting the driver on YouTube. And I accept that does give some, maybe many drivers a sense of shame, but that's not my intended consequence. It's more that I'm showing what's happened in a public space. If they're ashamed about it, it's probably more a sign of they know that they did something wrong and they're realizing that other people see them as having done something wrong. And then maybe the Gandalf Corner stuff where I'm stopping somebody from presenting further danger. But again, that's not a consequence. I never stop them from going the proper way around that traffic island. So the ones I remember that got any attention were Guy Ritchie. Obviously, he's by far the biggest. I couldn't say what a more perfect gentleman in his behavior. Maybe not the use of the phone behind the wheel, but that's that. I believe he got disqualified because of that. Then there was Chris Eubank. I thought he was using the phone, but actually he'd just been dialing and using his car speaker system in his very nice convertible Rolls Royce. Now, with Chris Eubank, I am embarrassed for not having recognized him, and I'm sorry about that. I should have, because I've always admired his sense of flair and fashion. He's a fantastic character. but I didn't recognize him. He in the end got done for going through the red light. And yeah, apparently he defended it, but didn't contest my evidence. So I wasn't required to turn up in court for that. Then there was Frank Lampard, where the CPS dropped the case. And all three of those cases were in the days of the old mobile phone law, pre-March 2022, where you had to prove interactive communication. And then since then, I caught Marinika Smirnova. She didn't turn up at court and was convicted. I believe in the last year, there's been some 150,000 video allegations over England and Wales, and that most of them get prosecuted. So although I happen to be the face of cycle cameras, there's clearly a very big appetite for reporting this kind of stuff. And I hope maybe you can take away that it actually is more dangerous than you might imagine. It is in public, and public safety is everybody's duty. And then, of course, we have that famous quote from Robert Peel, the founder of the Met Police, basically, in that the police are the public and the public are the police. And it's only the police who are paid to undertake duties that are incumbent on all members of the public in the search for a just and safe society.